Welcome to the chaos sector. There is a theory that some have posted, and we acknowledge its possibility. Here goes. Dylan was not there during the murders, but Bethany was there. Remember, the report claims Bethany saw Ethan and Xana at the frat party approximately from 10 p.m. to 1:45 a.m. There is no mention of Dylan being anywhere with Bethany, nor if she had attended a party with other housemates. So, where was Dylan? We don't know. But we know where Bethany was, based on the report. It's logical to suggest that Bethany had come home with Ethan and Xana. Let's break down this theory. Dylan was at home earlier than everyone else, including Bethany. Ethan, Xana, and Bethany arrive home around 1:45 a.m., Kaylee and Madison a few minutes later, closer to 2 a.m. Dylan leaves with her boyfriend, as a ploy to not be there when the murders occur. Okay, now this is a key moment in the scenario. Soon after, unfortunately, those housemates are murdered. We estimate within the 3 a.m. time frame. Bethany, who was on the first floor, hears everything and calls Dylan. The prosecution has to leak out truth, my friends, but only in the form of damage control. Like we mentioned, they tried to pair both together, but they were not together that night. So the alleged texting between the two, while the murders were happening, is a possible fact, but Bethany was physically there, texting Dylan about the murders, who was not, I repeat, not there. One had been alarmed and terrified about the murders taking place, while the other knew the murders would take place. That's why she wasn't there when it happened. These two are not together. This theory is logical, as Dylan has an official affidavit released about what she experienced, while Bethany apparently didn't know what was going on. Reverse the roles here, claim the perpetrator experienced everything, while the actual surviving housemate, who has exculpatory evidence, is depicted as being, quote, asleep during the murders. A clever way to eliminate the real witness out of the equation and fabricate another out of someone who is actually a suspect. But let's not rumble down the hill with that theory too hard. It's a possibility, that's all we want to point out. Now let's rewind 11 months and examine a segment from News Nation regarding the frat party and a 911 call around 3 a.m.
Police blotters and call logs are public record. Anybody can see them, and rightly so, because taxpayers pay for that work product. And now some eagle-eyed followers of the Idaho quadruple murder case have picked up on one particular item from the police on the night that the 4 college kids were murdered. In fact, the incident in question happened at almost exactly the same time as the killings. I'm going to read to you what the police blotter actually says. Quote, there was an alcohol offense reported at 3:01 a.m. on November 13th, and that's the last night the kids were alive. The location, a field on Taylor Avenue. You can see it there. Band. It's called Band Field. So that is not far from the Sigma Chi frat house, where 2 of the victims, Xana Kernodle and Ethan Chapin, spent a lot of their evening earlier on that night. The police timeline puts them at the Sigma Chi party from 8 to 9 p.m. But then there's a big 4-hour and 45-minute black hole where nobody knows, or nobody's saying anyway, where Ethan and Xana were between 9 p.m. until they got home at 1:45 a.m. So our Brian Enton joins me live again, and we're also joined by Gemma Gaudette, who's the host of Idaho Matters on Boise State Public Radio. Thank you to both. Okay, Brian, I'm going to begin with you. The big question is, what do we know about that very strange police call at 3:01 a.m.?
Well, we don't know much more than what you just said, Ashley. It was in the police blotter 301, had something to do with alcohol. Police did take down a report, although we haven't been able to get that report at this point. This is the field behind me where the call was made, the big white field right there. That's the frat house you just talked about. You can see with the Christmas lights, and it's all very, very close to the house where the murders happened.
Hold on, so someone called 911 about alcohol? Really? If I'm not mistaken, those buildings are all sororities and fraternities, right? So, college students would call the cops about other college students drinking? Doesn't seem likely. But there is a building that is more, well, adult-like. There is an Office of Development building on Nez Pierce Drive. But I'm pretty sure that office was closed, and surely closed on Saturdays. So would a sorority or fraternity call the cops about underage drinking? But wouldn't this be deemed snitching on either a fraternity or sorority?
And since Sigma Chi is the one who hosted the party, wouldn't they be held accountable for this offense? Why would someone snitch them out to the cops? Whoever made the call has had their identity concealed throughout the investigation. No interviews, nothing from the caller. But this would not be deemed relevant to the murders, so why conceal their identity? Others have been interviewed who are not even relevant to the case. I think the identity is concealed because there was foul play, and Moscow PD knows the real purpose of that phone call.
Yeah, whenever someone's identity is concealed, it's because they are concerned about their safety, or they themselves have something to hide that the authorities are not aware of. Do you think they are involved?
Well, it doesn't seem likely that college students, or one of them, would snitch to the cops about other students being drunk, right? That seems very unlikely. I mean, if they won't call the cops about a murder, surely a drunk kid stumbling around wouldn't bother them. It's just another night of partying, same conclusions, a different weekend.
Right, it would be just another weekend of drunken fun. Even if they were underage, nobody would snitch to the cops about it, because that could potentially get the fraternity in trouble, who would face penalties. And they definitely would be angry with whoever snitched them out to the cops. We can't really know who made that call, and what the call was about. But like Ashley mentioned, it was around the time the murders took place, so that's a possible connection.
I don't know if you're able to, but if you and your photographer Mo could sort of walk me that way, because as I understand it, you might actually be able to walk me at least.
Sorry, but before we continue, let's address the mysterious gap in time. Now Moscow PD had a time frame of 8 to 9 p.m. of Ethan and Xena at the party. But apparently they both had left the party, from 9 p.m. to 1:45 a.m., the time reported of their arrival back home. Something doesn't add up here. If they weren't at home in their disappearance, then where could they be, where nobody knew of their whereabouts? We present another theory, from others. Someone claimed that Xena had been involved in underground fights. She was fighting, to make money, so she could pay off the debt owed to the drug lords. Some even claimed that they heard people cheering Xena's name, in the grub truck audio. To be honest, it was inconclusive in our initial analysis. May revisit it for a better examination. Also, it was claimed that Ethan had been in a fight as well, with other frat brothers. The Linda Lane surveillance audio provides evidence of an altercation, as we examined prior. And something else, it was claimed that Ethan's brother and his sister were with him that night, at some point. I believe Ethan's brother was also a Sigma Chi, yet he didn't know where Ethan had gone? Was he even asked about it? Could it be, because he was actually with him after he left the party? And then there's more. The police report claims that Bethany had saw Ethan and Xena at the party from 10 p.m. to 1:45 a.m. Which means, she was at the party, right? Who invited Bethany to that party? We know why Xena was invited, she was Ethan's girl. But in this news segment, Ashley claims Moscow PD accounted for only a 8 to 9 p.m. time frame of Ethan and Xena at the party. Which of course gives us almost a 5-hour gap of time, where their whereabouts are not known or disclosed. Yet how can the same Moscow PD report that Bethany saw them, during a time frame that they also report weren't physically at the party? I'm pretty sure Ethan and Xena didn't teleport back and forth that night, so what gives? Deception, that's the conclusion. Now this was the initial reports, so we understand there may be redactions occurring. But there wouldn't be confusion about where Ethan and Xena were that night, because you would have to be informed by someone who was at the party, who knew Ethan and Xena were there only till 8 to 9 p.m., then they disappeared. Yes, the person, or persons, would physically know that Ethan and Xena were not there anymore, due to checking for them. And then similar sources inform Moscow PD that Ethan and Xena were actually there from 10 p.m. to 1:45 a.m.? And Bethany had attended the party, who saw them there during this time frame? Someone is lying, and we don't know who. Nevertheless, the lie itself is protecting a truth. Just wanted to get that out of the way, before we continued.
Part or all of the way from where you are to the home where the victims lived.
Yeah, we can walk you there. Again, frat house, field. This is like an apartment complex parking lot that we're in, and we'll walk you back, Ashley. And I've been telling you the last couple of days, there's it's a dense area. You know, when you just look at the shot of the house, you don't realize that all of these houses and apartment buildings are around. This is like a little walkway that the students use to get down to the frat houses. And we'll just walk up here. Be careful, Mo, because it's a little slippery. It's been snowing nonstop pretty much all day. Just looks like it let up a little bit. So we go up these steps here, and then this is a little road right here, Ashley. And you see here is the house. This is the house where the murders happened. So it's a short walk.
I had no idea. Wow. I mean, short walk, that's like 55 seconds. I mean, they could have gotten home so quickly from that frat house. I had no idea it was that close, Brian. That's remarkable.
Very close. Yeah,
Okay,
very,
well,
very
Gemma, now
close.
that we
And also,
go ahead,
again,
go ahead,
all
Brian.
the places they walked by. No, I was just saying, all the places, the apartments, the houses that they would have walked by. I mean, again, it's a dense area. There's a lot of people who live in this area.
Stuttering Stan always on the job. We saw students running from this very walkway during the body cam footage. Based on the direction in which they came from, we have to assume it was from either two locations: the Queen Road apartments, or the victim's home. And if you examined closer, there were more than 3 people running away. It appeared to be at least 5 or 6 people running. Now think about this carefully. 5 people are running from the direction murders took place, around the time frame that a bogus phone call was made, and also, during the time frame Kaylee and Madison were calling Jack. The call logs have Kaylee calling Jack the first time, around 2:45 a.m. This is also when Moscow PD had stopped the students in the Banfield. On a side note, I find it ironic a news reporter has the same last name as the anyway. Those phone calls ended around 3 a.m. And soon after, around 3:30 a.m., a black vehicle is circling Queen Road apartments. Come on, too much suspicious activity going on, around the time frame the murders occurred.
Ask yourself this question: why was that vehicle circling those apartments? This is during an emergency, where the housemates are being attacked. An honest detective would have to investigate that vehicle as well. They could possibly be linked to the murders, or even the killers, right? There was no interest in this vehicle, yet we know that Moscow PD had to view that same surveillance from Linda Lane, spotting the alleged Koberger's vehicle. You see the problem here? Hours of examining surveillance, and you literally ignore a suspicious vehicle circling around, near the crime scene. These detectives are a disgrace to their profession. Ask yourself another question. Why were those individuals running? Or better yet, why are they running away? What are they running from, or away from? Were they scared of something? Did they witness something? Were they involved in something bad? It's evident that at the very least, they witnessed something. I believe, the so-called 911 call was actually to thwart Moscow PD to focus on drunk college students, while the attacks were taking place, and soon after, the murders. Kaylee and Madison had called Jack, who is assumed to be the ex-boyfriend. In my opinion, I think it was the other Jack, who had warned them about a danger. It seems more logical that the girls would call the very person who had warned them prior. Since he had warned them, they felt that he could help them when that very danger had become a reality. This Jack had apparently skipped town after the murders. His phone records were not publicly released, yet if we put key evidence into context, it was Jack's words to the girls that are the most revealing. The neighborhood was in a hysterical state, and they knew there was violence taking place in that home. Just look at the location of the home, it's basically the center of attention. I believe the individuals were partying, hanging out in the neighborhood, violence occurred in the party house, and they ran away from the area. Maybe they were involved, but I get the feeling they witnessed the violence, and got the hell out of there. Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, and all the witnesses who might have seen something or had a camera out or would have just thought yet another group of students walking by. So Gemma, you just saw what Brian showed us and how close that was to the frat house. Talk to me a little bit about that frat party that night, because my thinking is that Ethan is a frat brother at the Sigma Chi. They all had to have known, you know, if he'd gone at 9 o'clock at night and they didn't see him again, right?
Well, what we know at this point, Ashley, about that fraternity party is that Ethan and Xana went together, as you mentioned. And then our understanding is that Hunter, Ethan's triplet brother, it was also a part of that fraternity house. And Hunter took Maisie, their sister, as his +1. But even Idaho State Police, the communications director of Idaho State Police, has said there are gaps in that timeline that night at Sigma Chi, and they want students to help them fill in those gaps. So they're still wondering, we're still wondering, you know, what happened within that time frame.
It's fascinating to read that, you know, Maisie and Hunter, the two triplets with Ethan, were at that party as well and spent the whole evening together with Ethan and Xana until those two left the party, which you would think they would know the time they left the party, and yet we're not being told that.
So there we have it. Ethan's brother and sister were also at the party. Now let's count all individuals who were there that are relevant to the case. Ethan and Xana, Ethan's brother and sister, and Bethany was also there. If his siblings were at the party, wouldn't they be informed by Ethan himself that he and Xana were leaving? And his brother was also Sigma Chi, so Ethan would likely tell him he was leaving. That is a problem, because Moscow PD has all the information regarding this, and is keeping it a secret.
But one of the scenarios is not true. Either Ethan and Xana had disappeared, around 9 p.m., or they were there from 10 p.m. to 1:45 a.m. One of the scenarios is used to cause a misdirection in the timeline of events. Which scenario seems likely to be true? They both seem logical. I could see Ethan and Xena leaving the party. You know, when I state this, I think this is the truth. Because it has the typical mysterious elements surrounding it. Nobody knew where they went, aligns with the same silent treatment regarding the entire case. Ethan's siblings would know where the couple went, and this would be told to the authorities. It is the authorities who create the break in the chain, due to concealing key information. I don't blame the college students, they are scared to tell the truth, and even if they did, Moscow PD wouldn't reveal that truth anyway. As for the report that Bethany was at the party, and saw Ethan and Xena from 10 p.m. to 1:45 a.m., it appears to be a conflation of time frames, in my opinion. Bethany may have arrived at the party around 10 p.m., but returned home around the same time as Ethan and Xena. Maybe she saw them leaving, close to the time she arrived. Perhaps they left closer to 10 p.m., not 9 p.m. We're trying to fill the gaps of what has been reported. There is obviously a misdirection, just trying to straighten our direction out.
I disagree, respectfully. I think Ethan and Xena had attended the party from 10 to 1:45. Bethany was there as well. Maybe she was invited by some frat guy who wanted to hook up with her. They all leave around 1:45. Heck, it's possible that Bethany was one of the females screaming in the Linda Lane audio. Remember, there was a physical altercation near Queen Road Apartments. And this would support the theory that Ethan had gotten into a fight with a frat brother. And it also would explain why the individuals were running from that area around 3 a.m. It would also explain why Kaylee and Madison were trying to reach Jack. Mind you, those calls started around 2:45 a.m., which was around the same time as the physical altercation in the Linda Lane audio. They knew things were becoming dangerous, and they were right. The fight was not some frat disagreement, in my opinion. It was far more severe than that. Maybe it was about drugs, maybe Ethan had caused a problem that resulted in a punishment from the fraternity. But that was only half of his problem. He may have decided to snitch and tell Xena to get prepared to leave Moscow. And this was the fatal decision. A suspicious black vehicle is spotted, circling Queen Road Apartments, soon after the fight, and also after the phone calls Kaylee and Madison made to Jack. Let's put it all in order. Ethan and Xena leave the party around 1:45. Bethany is assumed to have attended the party as well. Kaylee and Madison are at the grub truck around this time, and had previously been warned from Jack. The Linda Lane audio provides evidence of a fight, which I believe started around 2:20 a.m. Kaylee and Madison tried to reach Jack about 20 minutes later. Several individuals are seen running from that area around 3 a.m. The phone calls from Kaylee and Madison stopped around this time. A questionable 911 call was made at 3 a.m. Around 3:30, a black vehicle is spotted circling Queen Road Apartments. All of this activity, in chronological order, indicate the murders happened in the 3 a.m. hour, not 4 a.m. The black vehicle is clearly a suspect, who had been monitoring what was happening at the victim's home. They drove around in a circle, making sure everything was being taken care of. That's my take, of course.
There is one person missing here. You know who it is. Dylan. Where is Dylan during an approximate time frame of 10 p.m. to 1 a.m.? Moscow PD never established her whereabouts that night. They claimed, quote, she was in other places in the community. That does not sound official, my friends. It indicates she is being protected. Bethany and Dylan were not out together, as Bethany was reported to be at the frat party. So Dylan is not accounted for, and that is not how detectives handle investigations. Everyone else had a specific location, giving the public their whereabouts, except Dylan. Going all the way back to the previous series, the reason her whereabouts were not established, like everyone else, is because wherever she was, may indicate she was linked to those murders. Maybe she was with Emma and Demetrius? And Moscow PD obviously know that links her to the murders, with it being drug-related, of course. But if Dot claims Dylan was outside that Sunday morning, with these two drug pushers, can we suggest she was with them on Saturday night as well? We only deal with logic here.
That could explain the lack of information about her whereabouts. Moscow PD wouldn't disclose where she was, because that requires a specific location, and even accompanied by specific people. If she wasn't with Bethany, who was also at the frat party, and wasn't with Kaylee and Madison, where would she be, if not with her housemates? Her boyfriend? Okay, she was with her boyfriend, this wouldn't be concealed. I would go ahead and suggest she was with Bonnie and Clyde that Saturday night. And we all know what that indicates. Some have even suggested that Bonnie has been to the victim's home quite often. She would know the layout, she would know who stayed there, and she would know the neighborhood. They needed someone on the inside, though, to set up the attacks. Yes, I believe Bonnie and Clyde were the foot soldiers in this, who were ordered by the bigger fish to handle those housemates. They had their own goons to carry out the dirty work and came back to the home that Sunday morning, making sure Dylan, who was the inside conspirator, would keep her mouth closed about what she did, what she knew, and what she was involved in. And since the police department and the university, or universities, are in the back pockets of such big fish in the town, they wouldn't dare expose the truth behind the murders. But every day passing, we see how the truth is starting to slip out, and their deception is starting to slip away. That's my take. This is the Chaos Sector.